The morning at the lake was quiet, the kind of quiet that seemed heavy, as if even the birds had paused their songs. The water stretched wide and calm, sunlight touching the ripples with golden light, and the man stepped out onto his porch breathing deep, the air crisp with the scent of pine and wet earth. He had lived here for years, in this small wooden cabin that looked out over the water, and in those years he had seen every storm, every season, every trick played by the HOA that tried to drive him out. But this morning was different, because nailed to his door was a fresh piece of paper, white against the old dark wood, fluttering slightly in the breeze. He frowned as he reached for it. The nails driven too hard, almost as if someone wanted it to hurt when pulled free. He yanked it down, the wood creaking under the force, and unfolded the notice with rough hands. His eyes scanning the bold letters, the words sharp, "You are hereby ordered to vacate the premises immediately." His jaw tightened, the letters official, stamped with the HOA's seal, signed with Karen's bold handwriting. He could almost hear her voice in the words, cold, mocking. She had threatened this before in meetings, had warned him that one day his cabin would not stand, and now here it was in ink, his so-called final notice. His eyes narrowed, not in fear, but in something harder, something deeper, anger, not the kind that shouted or broke things, but the kind that burned slow, steady, silent. He folded the paper once, twice, and then a third time until it was small in his fist. His lips pressed tight, then curved into the faintest of smiles, a smile that carried no joy but a quiet promise. He whispered to himself, his voice low and sharp, "They don't know." And with that he turned back to the door, slipping inside, the floorboards groaning under his boots. The cabin was simple, plain wooden walls, a stone fireplace, a table worn by years of meals and memories, but every inch of it was his, built on ground that held secrets deeper than anyone around him understood. He walked through the room slowly, his fingers brushing the walls as if taking in every detail one more time. His mind not on losing it, but on what they didn't know they were standing on. Outside, the lake shimmered, boats tied neatly to the dock across the water, neighbors stepping out with coffee cups, their heads turning curiously toward his cabin. Word always spread fast when the HOA moved against someone, and now they must have been whispering, wondering if today was the day the man by the lake finally lost. He tightened his grip on the folded paper, slipped it into his jacket pocket, and returned to the porch, the morning breeze sharper now, carrying voices faint across the water, Karen's laugh among them. Her voice always too loud, too sure. She must have come early to see her work, perhaps even to celebrate it. The thought made his smile widen. But it was not the smile of defeat. It was the smile of a hunter who knew the trap was not his, but theirs. He stepped off the porch, his boots crunching against the gravel path, walked slowly around his cabin as if inspecting it one last time, though in truth he knew it was not the cabin they should be worrying about. He paused at the edge of his yard, staring down at the stretch of land that sloped toward the water, the soil damp, the grass long. This land had been his family's for generations. Papers older than Karen's HOA rested in a safe place, deeds that reached beyond the cabin, beyond the yard, to places the HOA thought were theirs. His hand slipped into his pocket, brushing the edge of another folded paper he kept close, not the notice, but the old deed yellowed with time, its ink faded but still strong enough to decide fates. He nodded to himself and turned back, locking the cabin door with deliberate care, the key turning slow, the sound sharp in the silence, as if sealing something inside. Suspense built in the air. Even the birds seemed to wait. The neighbors across the water leaned forward, one whispering to another. He didn't shout, he didn't fight, he just smiled. Their voices carried in the still air, but the man heard none of it. His mind fixed on the hours ahead. Karen believed she had won, believed this notice was the end. But the truth was far older, far heavier, waiting like a stone at the bottom of the lake. He adjusted his jacket, his boots steady on the gravel, and walked toward the path that wound down to the water's edge, his eyes never leaving the dock that gleamed in the distance, the one Karen and her board used freely, taxed neighbors for, claimed as theirs, the one built on ground that did not belong to them, the one that would soon shift the balance of power entirely. He stood still at the edge of his yard, the folded notice pressing against his chest, the old deed pressed against his heart, and he whispered again, his voice steady now, carrying across the wind. "They don't know. But they will. Karen's garage smelled of fresh paint and strong perfume. The space too polished for something as ordinary as cars. Instead it was arranged like a private council chamber. Folding chairs in a circle, a table in the center with neatly stacked files, and a large chart taped to the wall showing the neighborhood with bold red lines. The HOA board gathered there just after sunrise, sipping coffee from paper cups, their voices low but sharp with excitement. Karen stood near the chart, tapping it with a pen like a teacher lecturing children, her suit spotless, her lipstick too bright for the early hour, her smile fixed but dangerous. "It's done," she announced proudly. "The notice is on his door. By law he has no choice but to leave. Within days the cabin will be vacated and we will have control of the land." Her words made the others murmur with satisfaction. One man adjusted his glasses nervously, whispering, "What if he resists? He's lived there for years. He's not the type to leave quietly." Karen's eyes snapped to him, her smile sharpening. "Let him resist. We have lawyers, we have fines, we have the rules. He cannot fight all of us. Not anymore." Her tones silenced the doubt in the room, the others nodding quickly as if afraid to question her again. She walked to the table and picked up a folder, flipping it open. The papers inside stamped with HOA seals and signatures, she spread them out like trophies. "We'll list it under community expansion. The cabin will be demolished, and in its place we can develop facilities that raise property value. Maybe a new clubhouse, maybe extended parking for the dock. Imagine the fees we can collect." Her eyes gleamed at the word fees, greed dripping from every syllable. The others exchanged glances, some uneasy but none brave enough to speak against her. One woman with curled hair chuckled nervously. "That dock has always been our gold mine. Charging for slips, charging for storage. We've made more from it than anything else." Karen smirked. "And once the cabin is gone, we'll extend it, make it bigger, charge even more. No one can touch us there." Her laughter followed, sharp and echoing. Yet none of them noticed how her pride made her blind. None of them imagined that the very dock she worshipped sat on ground she did not own. They only saw what they wanted, power and profit. The man's absence was their victory in their eyes. "What about the neighbors?" another board member asked cautiously. "Some of them like him, they might cause trouble?" Karen waved her hand dismissively. "Neighbors are cowards, they complain in whispers but obey in public. They've watched him get fined for years and none of them stood by him. They won't start now. Besides, once the cabin falls they'll have no choice but to accept it. When it's gone, and money makes them forget quickly." Her arrogance filled the room, her confidence spreading like poison. The others laughed more freely now, comforted by her certainty. One even raised his cup and toasted, "To the future of our HOA." They all clinked their cups together, the sound hollow, their faces smiling but their hearts uneasy. Outside the garage the neighborhood remained quiet, but whispers already floated on the lake breeze. Fishermen at dawn had seen the notice on the cabin door. Neighbors sipping coffee on porches had watched Karen's smug walk back from the man's property, and rumors began to ripple. One man muttered to his wife, "She thinks she's unstoppable, but I've heard the land isn't what she believes." The wife frowned. "Careful, don't let her hear you say that." Fear still held them back, but curiosity had been sparked. Inside the garage Karen's pen tapped against the map again, her nail landing directly on the cabin's lot. "Once this is settled we will finally remove that eyesore, and with the new project our HOA will be admired across the county." Her board clapped again, but their applause sounded thin, hollow, because deep down even they knew. Her hunger was larger than her sense, yet none dared to challenge her. Not yet. Karen leaned back in her chair, sipping her coffee with satisfaction, her mind already savoring the image of the cabin in ruins, the man humiliated, the dock expanded, her rule unchallenged. But she didn't know, she couldn't know, that as she planned her empire she had already walked straight into the trap hidden in the very soil beneath her feet, the trap that would one day turn her arrogance into her undoing. The sun had climbed higher over the lake, turning the calm water into a sheet of silver. Neighbors were already outside, sweeping porches, sipping coffee, or tending to small gardens, but no one was talking about their morning chores. All their whispers turned toward one subject, the notice nailed to the cabin door. Everyone had seen Karen's proud walk back from the man's property, her steps too sharp, her chin raised too high, and everyone guessed what she had done. By noon half the lake already knew the HOA had moved to push the man out, Some pitied him quietly, others avoided the subject, but everyone felt the weight of what it meant. In hushed tones they spoke behind fences and over hedges. A fisherman tying his boat muttered to another. "She finally did it," slapped him with the notice. The other squinted across the water at the small cabin, his voice low. "I don't think he'll give in so easy. He's not like the others. He's quiet, but he's not weak." The fisherman nodded. There's something in his eyes, something she doesn't see." Across the street a group of women pretended to chat about flowers, but their voices were sharp with curiosity. One said, "He just folded the paper and walked inside. No yelling, no fighting." Another leaned closer. "That's what scares me. A man who smiles when he's being pushed. He must know something." Her friend frowned. "Careful. Don't let Karen hear you say that. She'll fine you for gossiping if she could." Their laughter was short, nervous, because everyone knew Karen's ears seemed to stretch into every corner. Inside homes whispers spread too. An old couple near the dock sat by their window, the husband peering out with binoculars, the wife knitting quietly. "He's too calm," the husband murmured. "Like he's waiting for them to make the next move?" She looked up from her work, her eyes narrowing. "Maybe he knows something about the land. His family's been here longer than anyone, longer than that HOA even existed." The husband adjusted the binoculars, following the man's figure as he walked the edge of his yard, hands in his pockets, calm as stone. "He knows?" The old man whispered. "Mark my words, he knows something they don't." On the far side of the lake kids skipped stones, their voices carrying. "My dad says the HOA can't touch that cabin, but Mom told him not to talk too loud." Laughter followed, but the fear in their parents' warnings lingered like a shadow. Fear of fines, fear of letters, fear of Karen, yet in every whispered word, every sideways glance, a question burned brighter. What did the man know that let him stay so calm, that let him smile when others would rage? And the more the neighbors talked, the more their curiosity grew. One man repairing his fence said to another, "Remember the dock? People say it's not even theirs, say it was built on land he owns." The other scoffed. "If that's true, then why hasn't he said anything?" The first man shrugged. "Maybe he's waiting for the right time." The words hung heavy between them, like a prophecy of something bigger coming. The gossip spread faster than the lake breeze, carried from porch to porch, until even those who had never spoken to the man began to believe there was more to the story. Yet none dared to ask him directly. He moved through the day quietly, his figure steady, his eyes sharp but calm, and that silence only fed the whispers. By evening lanterns glowed on porches, shadows long across the water, and the talk still circled the cabin. Hushed voices wondering if Karen had finally gone too far, wondering if the man's silence was not defeat but preparation. A storm brewing beneath the calm, a trap waiting in the shadows of the lake. The evening light turned the lake into a mirror of fire, orange and red streaks, stretching across the water, and at the far end of the shore the HOA board gathered at the boat dock, their pride and their moneymaker. The wooden planks creaked under their shoes as they stood close, talking too loudly, their laughter carrying across the water. Karen stood at the center of it all, her arms folded, her eyes sharp, her voice cutting the air. "Once the cabin is gone, this dock will be our jewel. We'll extend it, double the slips, charge twice as much. No one will dare resist us." Her board nodded, murmuring approval, their faces glowing with greed. Some neighbors lingered nearby, pretending to walk their dogs or tie their boats. But their ears stayed tuned, hungry for every word. The air was heavy with unease. Then, as if pulled by the same current, the man appeared, walking calmly down the slope toward the dock, his boots steady. His jacket zipped against the cool breeze, under his arm a folder of papers old and thick. His face gave nothing away, no anger, no fear, only a quiet calm that made the board members shift nervously when they saw him. Karen's smile twitched but returned quickly. She called out loudly, her voice mocking, Well, look who decided to join us. Come to say goodbye to your little cabin?" Her board chuckled weakly, but the man didn't answer. He simply walked to the edge of the dock and stood, the lake lapping softly against the wood below, his silence louder than her words. Karen raised her chin, her voice sharper. "You should know when you're beaten. You have no rights here. The board has spoken, and soon that eyesore will be gone." She gestured toward his cabin across the water, but still the man said nothing. He slowly opened the folder, the rustle of old paper. Loud in the quiet evening, the neighbors leaned closer, their hearts quickening, sensing something was about to break. Karen's confidence cracked slightly, her smile forced now. "What is that? More useless complaints, more silly claims?" she snapped, but her voice lacked its usual certainty. The man lifted his head at last, his eyes locking on hers, his voice calm but heavy. "No, not complaints, proof." He held up the first page, the edges yellowed with time. The ink faded but clear enough to read, the seal of the county stamped deep into the corner. The neighbors gasped softly. Karen's board leaned forward. Squinting, one whispered, "Is that a deed?" Karen scoffed loudly, though her face had gone pale. "Anyone can wave old papers around. This proves nothing. The HOA owns this dock. We control it. Everyone here knows that." But her words rang hollow. The man's calm presence made them tremble. He flipped another page, then another, each marked with signatures and seals, each tracing a line of ownership not to Karen, not to the HOA, but to him. His voice carried steady across the dock. "This cabin, this lot, this shoreline, and yes, this dock, all belong to me. They always have. Your notices, your threats, your fees mean nothing against this." The neighbors gasped louder now, some covering their mouths, others whispering. The board exchanged panicked looks, their greed drying into fear. Karen's smile finally broke, her eyes wide, her lips pressed thin. She stammered, You're lying. This can't be true." But her voice shook. The man said nothing more. He simply laid the papers flat on the wooden rail of the dock, letting the board see the dates, the seals, the signatures, undeniable truth staring them in the face. The silence grew heavy, only broken by the soft slap of waves against the shore, the neighbors' whispers rising like wind. "He owns it, all of it, even the dock." The board members stepped back, sweat forming on their brows. Karen's face twisted, her arrogance crumbling piece by piece. She tried to laugh, but it came out weak, hollow. "Forgery, this is all forgery." But her own words didn't convince even her. "Allies," the man closed the folder gently, his calmness like steel, his eyes sweeping the group before him, then turning toward the neighbors who now leaned openly forward, eager, emboldened. He gave the faintest nod, a silent signal that the tide had turned, and for the first time in years Karen had nothing left to say, her empire trembling on the wood beneath her feet. The air around the dock grew tighter, as if the whole lake was holding its breath. The board members leaned closer, but none dared to touch the papers. Karen's eyes flicked left and right, searching for a way out. Her voice rose shrill. "This means nothing. This is just old paper. Our HOA has full authority. Everyone knows it." But her words sounded weak against the weight of what lay before her. The man remained steady, his hand resting on the weathered folder, his voice calm but clear enough for every neighbor gathered nearby to hear. "This isn't just old paper. These are certified deeds, signed, sealed, and recorded long before this HOA even existed. My family owned this land when your rules were not even written, and that ownership passed to me, legally and permanently." His tone carried no anger, no boast, only a steady truth that made Karen's face burn red. One of the board members reached out hesitantly, lifting a page, his hand shaking as he read, his lips moving silently over the dates and signatures. Then he dropped it back on the folder as if it burned him, his eyes wide, his whisper barely audible, "It's real." Another board member muttered quickly, "Let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe it doesn't cover the dock." But the man turned another page, laying it flat so the county seal caught the light of the setting sun. The neighbors pressed forward, craning their necks, their whispers rising. "Look, it says shoreline rights. That includes the dock. It's his." The man's voice cut through the murmurs, steady as stone. "This deed states ownership of the lot, the shoreline, and all extensions built upon it. Your dock, the dock you profit from, sits squarely on my land." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Neighbors clutched each other's arms, stunned. The board stumbled backward, their faces pale. Even the ones who always laughed at Karen's jokes stood silent now. Karen shook her head violently, her voice breaking. No, this can't be true. We've managed this dock for years. It belongs to the HOA. Everyone pays us to use it. The man's eyes narrowed, his voice cutting through her denial. They paid you for something that was never yours. You charged them for my property. Every coin you took was theft. The words hung heavy in the air. Neighbors gasped louder, anger rising in their eyes, memories of fines and fees flooding back. One woman shouted, "You made me pay hundreds just to tie my boat there," a man added. "And you threatened me with lawsuits when I refused. All this time it wasn't even yours." Voices rose together, a storm building. Against the board, Karen tried to shout over them, her arms flailing. "Lies, all lies. He forged this. I'll prove it." But her confidence was gone, her words desperate. The man's calmness was a blade against her panic. And then came the final blow. Footsteps echoed from the gravel path behind the crowd. Heads turned as a figure approached, carrying a slim leather case. The county clerk, gray-haired and steady, his presence commanding instant silence. He walked with measured steps onto the dock, his eyes sweeping the scene. He opened the case and pulled out crisp documents with fresh seals, his voice calm but official. "We received a request to verify ownership records. I have reviewed the archives, and I can confirm, legally and without question, that this property, including the cabin lot, the shoreline, and the structure known as the dock, belongs to him." His hand gestured toward the man. The words dropped like a hammer. The crowd erupted in shocked gasps, neighbors whispering fiercely, board members staring as if the floor had fallen away beneath them. Karen's face drained of color. She stumbled back a step, gripping the rail, her lips trembling. "No, this isn't possible." But her voice was nothing against the sound of neighbors shouting now. "We paid you for nothing? You lied to us. You used us." Anger spread like fire. The man stood silent, his calm presence stronger than any shout. The papers spoke louder than words, and the clerk's official seal made them undeniable. Karen tried to steady herself, her voice cracking. He must have tricked you too." But even her board members were slipping away from her, their eyes avoiding hers, sweat rolling down their faces, the power she held for years crumbling with each second. The man finally stepped forward, his hand resting lightly on the dock rail, his voice quiet but cutting through the storm. "You tried to force me out of my home, but this is mine, and everything you built here stands on my ground. Your empire ends here." His words echoed across the water, sharp and final, leaving the board trembling and the neighbors wide-eyed. For the first time seeing the truth written plain before them, Karen's heart pounded in her chest as the clerk's words echoed again in her mind. The property belongs to him. It felt like the dock beneath her feet had cracked open, the weight of her empire sliding into the lake. The neighbors' voices buzzed like angry bees all around, their whispers turning sharper, their faces no longer fearful but bold, fueled by the truth. For years, she had lived off their silence, but now silence was gone, replaced by anger. She raised her hand to shout over them, her voice shrill and shaking. "You don't understand, he's lying. This man tricked us all. He forged those papers. He bribed the clerk." The neighbors booed and hissed. Some laughed bitterly at her desperation. The man stood calm, his hands folded over the folder, watching her fall apart without a word. The county clerk stepped forward again, his eyes cold, his voice steady. "These records come directly from the county vault, untouched for decades. They are original, authenticated, and filed lawfully. No forgery, no tricks." His words silenced the crowd, leaving only Karen's heavy breathing, her face red, her hands trembling as she clutched the dock railing. No, I won't accept this. I'm the president of this HO. I make the rules. I decide who stays and who leaves," she screamed, her voice echoing over the lake. But it carried no power anymore, only madness. Her own board members edged away from her, their eyes avoiding hers. One muttered, "This is bigger than us, Karen. We can't fight county records." Another whispered, "She's finished." Their loyalty cracked like glass under pressure, shattering into pieces. Karen spun on them, her eyes wild. "Cowards! All of you! You stood with me for years. You cheered for me. You obeyed me. And now you betray me." But her words fell flat, because even as she ranted, the neighbors began shouting back. A man stepped forward from the crowd, his voice firm. You fined me $500 for painting my fence blue. You said it ruined property values. Another cried out. You banned my children from fishing at this dock, said it was private, and now I learn it never even belonged to you. The voices grew louder, like waves crashing against her from every side, and Karen's screams could no longer rise above them. She turned back to the man, her face twisted with rage and desperation. You think you've won, but I'll fight you. I'll drag you into court. I'll bury you in lawsuits. I'll make your life miserable. Her voice cracked, high-pitched, almost broken. Her threats sounding less like promises and more like the desperate cries of a cornered animal. The man's calm voice cut through her hysteria like a blade. You already tried, and you failed. This land is mine. The dock is mine. And your threats mean nothing now. His words hit her harder than any shout, steady and final. The neighbors nodded, their whispers turning into approval, their trust shifting away from Karen's false rule toward the quiet strength of the man. Karen staggered, her body trembling, her mind spinning for any way out. She raised her chin again, trying to gather her arrogance, but it slipped through her fingers like water. I can still fix this. I can negotiate. Maybe we can share the dock, maybe. But her words only earned bitter laughter from the neighbors, laughter that cut deeper than insults, because it proved she had no more control. For the first time, Karen looked small, her posture bent, her eyes frantic, her voice trembling. Please, just give me something. Don't take it all. Without this dock, the HOA is nothing. Her board members said nothing, some even stepping closer to the neighbors, trying to distance themselves from her downfall. Karen turned her pleading eyes back to the man. But he didn't move, didn't soften. His silence told her the truth. Her power was gone, her empire crumbled, her crown shattered by her own arrogance. The lake reflected her broken figure standing on stolen ground, and for the first time in years, everyone saw her for what she truly was. Not a leader, not a protector, but a desperate woman clinging to the ruins of her lies. The lake air grew heavier as Karen's desperate words faded into silence. Her voice cracked and broken, her once proud figure trembling on the dock. The neighbors who had once lowered their heads around her now stood taller, their fear dissolving into something new, anger. Mixed with relief, years of quiet suffering boiling to the surface. An old man with a cane stepped forward, his voice shaking but strong. For 10 years you fined me for keeping chickens, said it was against community standards, but all along you built your empire on land that was never yours. The crowd murmured in agreement. His wife clutched his arm, adding, You humiliated us at meetings, laughed at us when we couldn't pay. Now it's your turn to be ashamed. Karen's lips trembled. She opened her mouth but no words came. Her own board members stepped farther from her, one even lowering his head toward the man, muttering, We never knew, we thought she had authority. But the man gave no reply, his silence heavier than any speech. The neighbors' voices grew louder, overlapping. You fined me for flowers? You banned my son from swimming here. You stole from us. Their anger no longer whispered behind curtains but shouted openly on the shore. Karen turned in circles, her eyes darting from one face to another, realizing the crowd that once feared her now hated her. The board members who once cheered her now disowned her. She was surrounded but utterly alone. The man stood steady, his calm presence drawing every gaze. His quiet strength filling the space Karen had lost. Slowly, the neighbors began turning toward him, their voices softening, their anger shifting into trust. One woman near the front spoke clearly. You never threatened us, you never fined us, you stayed quiet, but all along you held the truth. This land belongs to you, not her. The neighbors nodded, the energy shifting like the current of the lake, flowing toward him. Karen's knees weakened, she clutched the railing, her voice shrill. You can't turn against me. I built this community. I gave you rules. Without me you are nothing. But her words were drowned by a fisherman's laugh, sharp and bitter. Without you we are free. Without you we can breathe. The crowd erupted in cheers, not wild, but firm, steady, voices of people reclaiming their dignity. Karen's face twisted in rage, but even her board joined the shift. One man pulled the HOA badge from his jacket and tossed it onto the dock, his voice heavy with guilt. We followed you too long. No more. Others murmured the same. Their loyalty collapsing, Karen stared at them in disbelief. Traitors! She screamed, her arms flailing. But no one listened. Not even the people she once commanded. The man finally lifted the folder again, his voice calm, carrying across the water. This dock, this shore, this cabin. They are mine by law, but today they are also free from her. His words cut clean, final, leaving no doubt. The neighbors clapped, some cheered, their cheers echoing over the water. Karen staggered back as if struck, her empire crumbling before her eyes, the power she had clutched for years shifting to the very man she tried to destroy. She shouted again, her voice hoarse. You'll regret this, all of you will regret this. But her threats sounded like the cries of someone already defeated. The neighbors ignored her, turning their backs on her one by one. Their faces lifted toward the man. His quiet strength now the anchor of the community. Karen stood alone on the dock, her own shadow long in the fading light, the lake reflecting not her victory but her downfall, the power she thought eternal gone, and in its place the people finally free. The dock was quiet now, but it was not the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of power shifting. The neighbors stood firm, their faces hard, their voices whispering in unity, while Karen trembled at the center, her shoulders slumped, her hair sticking to her damp face, her eyes darting wildly as if searching for a way back into the throne she had just lost. But there was none. The man stepped forward slowly, the old folder in his hand, the fading sunlight glinting off the county seals stamped on the papers. His boots thudded against the wood with each step, the sound steady, like a judge walking to the bench. All eyes followed him, the crowd waiting, the board silent, Karen frozen. He stopped at the very edge of the dock where the water lapped against the posts, then turned and faced them all. His voice calm but heavy, every word falling like a stone into the lake. For years you allowed her to control you with fear, with lies, with threats that meant nothing. She stole from you, fined you, and claimed this place as hers, but it was never hers, it was mine. Gasps rippled again, though now they carried no shock, only the weight of truth finally spoken. He lifted the papers for all to see. The cabin is mine, the shoreline is mine, and this dock you've all paid for year after year. It is mine too. His words echoed across the water, firm, undeniable. Karen shook her head violently, screaming, No, no, you can't do this. I am the HO, I am the law. But her voice cracked, her scream, swallowed by the murmurs of the neighbors. One shouted back, Your law is over? Another cried, We're free now. And their voices grew louder, rolling over her like waves until she fell silent, her mouth open but powerless. The man lowered the papers, tucking them back into the folder with care, then pulled a heavy keyring from his pocket, the metal glinting in the fading light. He stepped to the small gate at the entrance of the dock, slid the largest key into the lock, and with a sharp twist, the gate clicked shut, the sound loud and final. Every head turned, every heart pounded. As he lifted the key high for all to see, his voice calm. From this moment, this dock no longer belongs to the board. It belongs to me, and it will never again be used to steal from this community. The neighbors erupted in cheers, some clapping, some crying, the sound filling the air with raw relief. Karen stumbled forward, reaching out with trembling hands. No, don't take it, please, we can negotiate. I'll lower the fees, But her words died as the neighbors turned their backs on her. No one listening, no one caring, her power was gone. The man closed his fist around the keys, his eyes sweeping the crowd, then resting on her broken figure, his final words sharp and cold. You tried to take my home, you tried to destroy me, but in the end you destroyed yourself. Your reign is finished, and this place will never answer to you again. The words cut through the air like the crack of thunder. Karen's knees buckled, her breath ragged. Her once proud image shattered in front of everyone she had ruled. The neighbors stood taller now, their fear gone, their hope returning. Some even stepped toward the man, shaking his hand, thanking him, their voices filled with gratitude. Thank you for ending this. Thank you for standing up to her. He only nodded, his calm steady, his eyes still hard, because he knew this was not just his victory, it was justice. The lake reflected the last light of the day, the dock gate locked, the keys secure in his hand. the neighbors free, the board broken, and Karen nothing more than a shadow of the tyrant she once believed herself to be. The final word had been spoken, and the community would never forget the night the man at the lake turned silence into power and crushed the queen of fear with nothing but truth.